As long as you're live streaming, you're good now.
Yeah, I did it.
I was telling them that,
I'm so, I'm not having.
we'll break it down. It's, the live stream started, we saw it in there. We're not the host.
Okay, come here. So I can get it to go, watch. And then I hit it and then it's there, but then it'll die. See how I'm frozen? And then it dies.
So,
That is scary. Why don't I log in on here so at least I can control if I want to be at the meeting?
yeah, try that.
Like, I mean, any.
It's just because then the only reason you need to be at the meeting is to end it and to stop the live
Want to
stream.
mute your microphone?
I can't. How can I mute my mic? How can I mute it? Yeah, do this.
What did you do it before?
We were just waiting for a quorum and we just got it. Thank you so much, Bob, for making 5 people. We appreciate you calling in. Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order. and recognize that we're conducting this meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Shuswap and Huipachesset First Nations, and we're grateful for your opportunity to do so. And we also have directors calling in from other territories, and we'd like to recognize those First Nations and acknowledge them with our respect and our gratitude. And a notice to attendees of the public and delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube on the Regional District website. And we'll go around the room first, and we'll do introductions. My name is Debbie Haggard, and I'm the chair of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee meeting. So we'll go to Jack next. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Jack McClellan, alternate for the metropolis of Beaufort.
Penny Cody, I'm the electoral area director for Sprout Lake. Jenny Brown, general manager for community services. And I'm Heather Zenner, manager of administrative services.
Thank you. First, we have the approval agenda. Is there any additions from directors? Seeing none, is there any additions from the corporate officer?
No additions.
Thank you. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Director McClellan, second by Director Cote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have the minutes from the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee meeting held May the 18th, 2023. Is any errors or omissions? Seeing none, could I get a motion that the minutes of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee meeting held on May 18th, 2023 be received? Motion by Director Cote.
Second.
Second by Director McClellan. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Then we have petitions, delegations, and presentations. First, we have Victor Copetti, Transit Planner, BC Transit, regarding Regional Transit Project Plan. Good morning, Victor. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, thank you. We're looking forward to your presentation, so please go ahead.
Absolutely. Should I be sharing my screen? If I have some
Yes,
slides
please.
here? Okay, will do. Is everybody able to see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. All right. So hello, everybody. My name is Victor Copetti, and I'm a transit planner with BC Transit. I just wanted to provide a quick update today regarding some of the work that we're doing on the Transit Future Service Plan for Port Alberni. And so I've actually presented to this committee once before, but I just kind of wanted to do a quick overview in case there are any new people in the room, or if it's been about 6 months since I did that presentation. So I just kind of want to make sure that everybody's up to speed on what the TFSP entails. And so the TFSP is a document that we use kind of as a high-level planning document to do a complete review of the Port Alberni transit system. So we break it up into phases, and the first step is planning work. So we're going to be doing a lot of review of the existing system, compiling existing ridership data, and looking for positive trends as well as places where the system might be able to improve. From there, we're going to be doing a lot of engagement. I can look at data and make recommendations all day long, but we want to see what some of the major stakeholders and the general public want to see with the system as well. And so we've developed a public engagement plan, and we will be reaching out to major stakeholders, operators, the general public, trying to get as much information as we can about the system from those who use it and experience it regularly. We're looking at doing both online and in-person engagement as well, just to try to capture everybody depending on their preferences. And from there, we will look at creating the final report, which will include service improvements for the existing transit system, and then any corresponding infrastructure that we would need to support those improvements. So where are we at today? Well, we have completed a couple of items. The terms of reference that we laid out everything that we were planning to do with the project has been signed by all parties. The public engagement plan has been complete, so that includes outreach strategies, timelines, and identifying some risks. We have created our operator survey. It hasn't gone out to the operators as of yet, but it is pretty much ready to go. And I have been doing some review of the demographic changes and various community plans that could impact the TFSP. We also have a lot of items that are in progress. So we have started compiling contact information for all our main stakeholders. It's quite an exhaustive list. We want to make sure we contact everybody who would be involved or who would be impacted by this. And so some of those stakeholders, we have found contacts, and some of them we are still doing some outreach to make sure we have the right person from each organization who's going to be involved in this project. I have been designing some of the online engagement. So I have been working on the survey. And so we have kind of the general template, but some of the more specific questions that we want to ask Port Alberni residents, those are still in progress. I have also been reviewing data on system performance. And I have been developing some of the draft service improvements for staff and the community to review. I'm going to kind of look at it from a planning perspective and from local staff to have an initial recommendation, but then we want to see what the engagement pulls out in terms of, you know, are we on the right track, or are there some things that we've missed as part of our review? Unfortunately, there have been a couple of delays with the project as well, and I want to be transparent with that. Some of the we did quite a bit of risk identification and assessment with the TOR and the engagement plan, but there were some things that we could not necessarily foresee. There's been a lot of data validation work on my end. Some of the data that we're using is a little bit out of date. And while we're switching over to some of the more modern data, some of the older data that we have available has some inaccuracies. So I need to make sure to validate that data before I make any conclusions from it. And there's also the Port Alberni Highway 4 road closures. And so when this happened, we made the decision to delay engagement until that road is back open. And so we were originally looking at doing engagement closer to the start of the summer, and now we're looking to do it probably in the next month or two. So what's coming up next for the project? Well, the planning work is almost complete. Once the background technical sheet is complete with all of the data and some of our initial recommendations, phase 2 of the project is done, which is really exciting. And we're also kind of in the process of stage 3, but we still need to complete that engagement with the drivers and general public and our stakeholders. And we're probably looking to have that done by October of this year. From there, we can move on to creating the report. So I'm going to be creating a draft report. We want to work with council to make sure that they review a lot of the input from staff, the general public, and we want to make sure that they're on the same page as well. And so that report will probably go through a couple of revisions, and we would hope that it would get signed and ratified probably in early 2024. So we'd be looking like February, most likely. And that's everything. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to field them, or if I'm unable to answer them, I can certainly record them and take them back. So thank you all for your time today.
Thank you so much, Victor. I appreciate that update. Is there any questions from directors? Director Cote.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and letting us know where you're at. So how will you be engaging the public?
That's a great question. So we are looking to do engagement with the public both online and in person. So I'm currently in the process of building an online survey that would go out to the general public, and we can use social media and any other contact avenues you have with the general public to advertise that. But I'd also like to do a little bit of in-person engagement. With COVID-19, we scaled back our in-person engagement quite a bit. And there might be some riders and members of the community who aren't comfortable with answering those kind of questions online, or who would prefer the in-person format. And so I'd like to bring that back at least a little bit and have some sort of open house at some point to give people the opportunity to give feedback in person as well.
Jenny.
Thanks so much, Victor. Great presentation. A couple points I was wondering if you could just elaborate on. I know you speak to Port Alberni, but obviously this also includes the regional district and the valley as a greater whole, which is why you're here at the regional district presenting. And one of the things that's been brought up by directors, and I just thought I would bring it up as a point, is about the regional concept and the regional connections. And I know that traditionally the transit study might just be looking at what do we want to do, but as I understand the scope of this is slightly broader. Maybe you want to speak just a little bit more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. You are correct. While we are looking in Port Alberni itself, we would also be interested in looking at some further regional connections. I know studies have been done in the past, and it was a little bit before my time. I started with BC Transit just under a year ago now, but I know some studies have been done in order to look at connections to Sprout Lake and Beaver Creek. And so as part of the TFSP process, we would be definitely reviewing those studies, going to the general public, gauging interest, and potentially in the final report kind of planning out what the main priorities would be in terms of which of those communities would want to see that transit service, and a little bit of when. Again, it is a very high level plan, but we would probably have, you know, short, medium, and long-term goals and years roughly associated with that. And so we could look at some of those regional expansions and sort of plan ahead for the next 5 to 7 years we'd be looking at probably.
Director Cote, did you have another question?
I did, thank you. So Ms. Bryn just actually touched on it. I don't really see how this is going to be communicated to my community of Sprout Lake. You mentioned that there has been a study looking at Sprout Lake Transit connecting to the city. I did a paratransit. I did a handy dart tour with Bill Atkins with a handy dart to see how long it would take to make a route. And he said it was within the hour, so it would work. So there's a lot of information that's already been collected, and using that I think is important. But there was interest in making that route include all of the rural areas, not just Sprout Lake. So I want to make sure that that's been identified, and there's a lot of users that don't have social media, don't use social media. So it's one of those things that elders and youth that might not have a cell phone or the ability to do a survey online, maybe a mail out or a public engagement with all of the public, but invitation that goes out to all of the rural areas as well, I think is super important moving forward. And 5 to 7 years is a little bit long. Thanks.
Well, in terms of the 5 to 7 year window, that's kind of more the plan as a whole, but we would be looking at some shorter term goals as well. I think we typically lay it out as, you know, what's going to happen in the first 3 years and what's going to happen in the 3 to 4 years beyond that. And so in terms of the engagement, I will definitely take that back and include it in some of our engagement plan. You know, the online survey and the public open house were kind of some of the ones that we initially identified, but we're definitely flexible in terms of the needs of the community. And so if we want to reach some of those rural areas and we find that mail outs, you know, maybe mail outs have been quite successful in the past, we can easily take our survey and kind of adapt it to make sure that it reaches all the audiences that we want to reach. We definitely don't want to leave anybody out. So.
Thank you. Any other questions from directors? We actually have somebody here from the public, and we usually don't have questions until the end, but he was very interested in this presentation. If it's okay with the directors, may I ask him if he has any questions? Did you want to come up and ask a question?
Sure. We probably should make a motion.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we allow, your name? Alex, last name? McComb to speak.
And I'll second that motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Please go ahead with your question.
So I was gathering interest online on Facebook in particular regarding a connection to Nanaimo. Is there anything like that in the works, planned, or even considered? Like even a connection part of the way to Qualicum Beach? Has that ever been floated?
That is a good question. Based on my research, if it has come up, it was not a short-term goal that we would have been looking at. That being said, it's definitely something that we could consider as part of this process. And so it would likely be a more long-term goal as part of the plan, because that is quite a bit of an investment that we would be looking at there. But that being said, BC Transit does have experience with inter-regional routes. And so there's interregional routes that we're looking at, improving and making better connections with. And so, if this is something that comes out of the plan as something that, residents and council and would want to see, and the planning in the background kind of supports it, that's definitely something that we could incorporate as part of the TFSP. So, I can't say for certain yet, because we kind of have to go through that entire process and see what comes out of it. But in terms of a long-term goal, I think that could be, there's definitely a lot of potential there. So.
And if I could just kind of elaborate and follow up on that one, Victor and Chair, if you don't mind. It was identified in the scope, the original scope for this project was a portion of that was looking at that interregional connecting piece between here and whether that's Qualicum to tie into RDN transit or to Nanaimo itself was identified as a portion of the scope of this project.
Did you have any other questions?
Oh, none in particular. Thank you.
And just to add to that, Victor, it did come to City Council last term, and I think it just came up again this term. And we had invited BC Transit to come and do a presentation to the Port Alberni City Council, but they canceled because of the highway closure. So hopefully we'll be able to bring you in to come in front of City Council to talk about that very topic.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you. I would hope that your study would include First Nations.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
No mention of that. So that's definitely needed. Seeing as how this is a AV and Bamfield committee, connection to Bamfield and First Nations in that area would be important moving forward as well. Since the road is being improved, I think that there's a opportunity there. They need transit as well, and even around that community would be great. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. No, that was my apologies when I created the slide deck for today. I kind of summarized everything in the terms of reference, but in the signed terms of reference, we immediately identified that we would want to reach out to the First Nations communities. And so as part of the stakeholder list that we are compiling, we're making sure that we have people in those communities who are going to be involved with the project. And we want to make sure to reach out with them directly and engage with them directly to make sure all of their needs are heard and met.
Any final questions for Victor before we let him go? Mr. Director McClellan.
Yeah, just when you're doing this report, and you say it's for the next 5-7 years, at which point during this time are you going to give us the cost of what it's going to be? Is this going to be very high on mines, particularly in the regional district and beyond. And the concept of going over the hump with a bus is great, I guess. But at what point do you tell us that so that we can make priority decisions?
Right, that's a great question. So the way that the Transit Future Service Plan will work, we are going to kind of lay out the resources that we're going to have to allocate for any of the potential expansion that we'd be looking at. So we might say in the plan, okay, we want to increase frequency on this route. And so we would need this many hours of service and maybe an additional bus. And so that's what the plan, the TFSP is going to show. From there, we take that information and we're going to be putting it into more operational plans. We're calling them 3-year plans that we're starting to roll out. And so the 3-year plan, we're looking at having it updated annually. And in the 3-year plan, we would see, okay, you've got you want this many buses and this many hours in let's say 2024, 2025. And then from there we would calculate the cost associated. And so you could kind of see the cost laid out for the next 3 years. Obviously, plans switch a little bit. They change, priorities move around. And so that kind of lets us identify everything as part of the TFSP process. But when it comes to the actual costing and implementation, we can be a bit more flexible there.
Thank you very much. So we look forward to working with you in the next little while. If there's anything that the regional district can help you with, I hope you can reach out. So we look forward to working with you and seeing the final results. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Just a point of order, Madam Chair. I see Director Boyko joined the meeting on Zoom and Director McClellan is in the room. So could I get clarification on who is representing Beaufort?
I'm here as a visitor and just have a few minutes. I will not be talking. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is ACRD TFN Equitable Employment MOU. And we have Jenny Broom, General Manager of Community Services, speaking on this today. Jenny, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as the committee might remember, back in February, we did an update on our ACRD, Sasha First Nation working group. We have a working group with the landfill. As everyone is aware, we currently have a 5-year license of occupation, and we're looking for long-term tenure. So we're meeting on a regular basis to discuss opportunities for improvement, concerns, and many issues there. One of the items that's come up that's been a really interesting discussion is about equitable employment. So looking at either employment opportunities at the landfill or co-management and all sorts of discussions, it's been really positive. And then really the conversation has bloomed from there. And I think that there's a lot of similar thinking and that this is an opportunity that might be a good time to pursue. So we've had some side meetings just talking really about what would an equitable employment initiative look like. And essentially what the idea is looking to increase employment opportunities for local Indigenous people in positions for local government, whether that's here at the band, like in the band office itself, and really just looking to have better representation of our community in our local government. So it's not that this is a new idea. And efforts have been made for years. And so the question is, why aren't we seeing any real progress for that? And those discussions have really highlighted for me that this isn't an easy solve. It's not just about promoting jobs more. Oh, great, that will solve this. It's a really complicated issue. And I think if we're going to see some traction and moving forward, we're going to actually have to dedicate a lot of staff time and talk about changing policies, procedures, training, potentially apprenticeships, outreach, all sorts of initiatives that could actually make a big difference. Realizing that this isn't a small solve, we've really said, okay, we need to talk to both, like if we're going to work on this as a partnership, we want commitment at the highest level to support to move forward with this. So we drafted a memorandum of understanding that sort of outlines what a partnership would look like, what we're trying to achieve. And I'm here today asking if there is support for that. So the idea is that we would start small. Again, it's a complicated issue. So if we're looking to have some success, I think it's good if we can start with 2 parties. Sashot happens to be well positioned right now as they're actually building capacity. They just created a position for an employment and training coordinator. They've also got a position for human resources that they've just brought on. And so they're really building that capacity. I think the ACRD is also positioned well right now that we could both dedicate staff resources to make this move forward. And the bigger intent, of course, is that this is regional. This is for all of our First Nations, for everyone to be very inclusive. So we're looking at just an original 3-year memorandum of understanding. Resources will be significant. And I think that that's one thing that I really want to have an honest discussion about. If we're going to be doing this and we're going to commit, we should commit the time to make it successful. So to start with, we're thinking probably 20 hours of staff time, and that's just ACRD staff time to complete the MOU. And then on a yearly basis to have meaningful discussions and come up with some plans that might actually be successful, we are estimating about 70 hours. Any of those initiatives we would be bringing back to committee and board to discuss, and we would detail out how much staff time and cost that would be looking at, although potentially there would be a lot of grant support for any initiatives that we're working towards. We can see that. But it could be a growing initiative. I think it's an excellent initiative. It aligns with our strategic plan objective, which is to support reconciliation partnering efforts. And it really builds on a lot of the relationships that we've put together working on either on landfill issues, as well as we have a really good working group between the ACRD and Sashot right now, as well as with our other First Nations. I think that provides sort of a lot of background information. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Director McClellan.
Yeah, just curious. I've been sitting here I've read this morning, and I've been trying to picture this. In the past, like up until I guess now, people from First Nations have worked for the governments in here, and versus vices, where people who weren't First Nations have worked for their government and been hired and used. So what is missing, I guess, that we need to put a lot of resources in to get another MOU? It just seems that we get MOUs all the time and they don't go far. And I'm not sure I'm just questioning whether it's a viable operation or not.
Yeah, well, I would say that we don't have a lot of full community representation right now at the regional district. So I think that there is opportunity for that. And whether that's at the regional district, at the city, when we look at that representative amount, I don't know if it is reflective. And a lot of that, it is interesting when you have those initial discussions. The question is, well, why not? And, as silly as this sounds, maybe it's the same question for everyone. Why does no one pursue a career in local government? Well, because it's not a firefighting job. It's not a NASA job. So there is a little bit of, I think that some of the small things that we could do is engage with the schools and make them aware that these positions exist. I think, and these are ideas, I don't know. We would have to work through this and see what has actually been successful for employment and recruiting initiatives in areas. But doing job fairs, things like that, we do not do. Creating positions that can actually work with our staff to expose them to what it is like at the regional district. Believe it or not, I think that there is a lot of barriers to someone feeling comfortable coming and working at the regional district if you're not accustomed to that. And those are the barriers that I think do need to get broken down in order to successfully make change.
Go ahead, please.
One of your examples was apprenticeships. What apprenticeships do we have in the regional district?
I would say we have none, but I have seen in other local governments that I've worked at is even summer students who work in the water system. And especially when we're talking about the landfill, we've been brainstorming different opportunities. Like, can we create either a co-op student or whatever the title might be, but someone who then shadows and learns the position, right, of water monitoring, along with some of our already trained staff. And that allows for that training and capacity building to happen within the organization.
We have Director Sparrow and then Director Cote.
Okay, thank you. Lower hand. If you can hear me, one of the things that we're partnering with one First Nations, have we talked to the other First Nations to see how they feel about this, or will they be sidelined in a way put with this thing forward, or will they be also considered part of this memorandum of agreement in a loose sense?
Excellent point. Yes, because we want this to be for all of our First Nations. And we see that happening. But I think that right now we don't have a lot of the pieces in place. And I think if we can start with one partnership with one organization to clearly identify what are the barriers, we need to work with a First Nation to really get clarity on what that looks like and what would success look like. And then we can start to include others to broaden it out. It's funny, we just had a presentation from transit, but I always remember when we worked on custom transit, and the idea is that once you make transit more accessible to people who have the biggest barriers to using it, it then is more accessible to absolutely everyone. So I think all of the initiatives that we would undertake in this small partnership could then be capitalized on to be spread it's just for the regional district, which represents the region. And yes, we are thinking of it. We've given them the heads up so that there's no, because we don't want it to look like we're exclusively or excluding. It's not the idea. Again, I think it's just a matter of these two organizations, the ACRD and Sashat First Nation, happen to have the capacity at this time to, I think, make progress right now.
Thank you, Director Cote.
Thank you. I'm feeling very uncomfortable about this request coming forward. It sounds to me like this is social procurement along those lines, where we start employing people that we sort of target. And I don't like targeting one First Nation over all of them. I think there needs to be equity for all, not just First Nations. I think it has to be an opportunity for every person. We are all living in this community. I really like the thought that Tishat have an employment trainer in place, which gives them an advantage, which would be great. But I still don't feel like it's a great idea to start singling out one First Nation over the others, making a memorandum of understanding with them. We could do that after we do a policy, but I think that the policy needs to come first, so that, which would run along the lines of social procurement, where we want to train people that have been overlooked in the past. I think that employment opportunities should be an opportunity for every member of our community. Working with reconciliation in mind, absolutely. There's also the fact that if you want to go back to a lot of UBCM information, they're talking about women being not considered for employment because they're women. So feeling quite uncomfortable moving forward with this, the way that it's being presented. Thanks.
Did you want to comment, Jenny?
I really appreciate you bringing that up and being honest about that. It's, in all honesty, it's a difficult topic to even talk about for myself, right? Like in general, because when you're trying to promote people who might have barriers, it does become a complicated conversation. And we don't want to at all be exclusive in any way. I think that the regional district as a whole, organizationally, we're trying to make small strides to be inclusive. I think that one of the benefits of this is that if we're committing time and energy to putting the effort in to make this, which I think everyone is probably in agreement, we do want to be a more inclusive employer regardless. I just worry that I'm not sure that I see progress happening if we aren't committing time and energy to it. And I also don't know if we are able to do this in an insular fashion. So, because theoretically we should just be doing this and we would do it by ourselves. And and then the other extreme version is that we invite everyone to the table. So then, we have many First Nations within the region, and we're asking for a lot of commitment from them because it is also staff time, right? To have those honest dialogue conversations and have that feedback. We can invite them, but I don't know if that everyone happens to be in the right place right now for the time.
Go ahead.
Thank you. There is C2C grants that we can apply for to bring everybody to the table. And I think that that's important that we do. I don't want to alienate any one First Nation, thinking that we're prioritizing moving forward. So that's how I feel. That's how I feel. So I'm sure that others may feel the same moving forward. So I would love to work with the TSHAT, but I would also love to work with other First Nations that are within our boundaries and even without outside of our boundaries. But I'd like to take a second look at this. This is something new that's come forward, and I don't find it inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Director Sparrow, Director Minions, and then Director Beckett.
Okay, thank you. I'm sort of on the same lines as Director Cote in the fact that I want to be inclusive to all First Nations, and I find this is not going to be inclusive to all of them. I understand what's going to happen. I'm fine with being more people in the organization, but it seems like we're prioritizing one, maybe for I don't know, for whatever reason. The other thing I don't understand is in the memorandum of understanding, it says, whereas, second line down, the TSHAT First Nations would like to increase the number of staff working in their organization that are members of their nation. Why is that in there? If they can do that on their own, why are we embedding that into this memorandum of understanding to do that? I don't understand that part of it. Can you explain that one to me?
Go ahead, Jenny.
Yes, and I think it's a great point because really one of the tenets is that we want to see more local Indigenous people in local government, and that doesn't just mean the regional district. It doesn't just mean the city. It means within the First Nation local governments. They are struggling to get people to fill positions within their own communities, and that is for all of them as well. Because again, people are not aching to get into local government roles. They all want to go off and be cops and firefighters and teachers, and they know the traditional jobs. So the benefit will be for all of the communities, not just within the First Nations, as well as the municipalities and the regional district. And again, on the broader scope is the idea, right? That is the vision.
Thank you, Director Minions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And just want to recognize first the comments that have been made around kind of broader inclusivity. And I think recognize and appreciate the points that the board's trying to make. I want to speak in support fully of what's been put in front of us. And although I appreciate kind of the push to include everyone, I think sometimes we can broaden something out to a point where it becomes ineffective to actually take a step and start to make positive progress. So that's what I see this as, not one program that's supposed to kind of solve all the world's issues, but rather a start to something that I think we all believe strongly in. And certainly I'm hearing a lot of support for the general concept of inclusive employment within our organization. I think what I'm hearing more is concerns about, is this enough? I think if we wait until it's absolutely perfect, we will probably wait forever and not necessarily be able to move forward on anything. So I think this is a fantastic step. And if Sashat is ready to prioritize this work with us, then I think it's a great opportunity for us to move forward. So yeah, strongly in support, and thanks to staff for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Jenny, could we identify this as like a pilot project and then say our long-term goal is to be inclusive of all governments?
Thank you, Chair. I think that that really lands on what the intent is, and what I'm hearing from feedback from the directors as well, because we don't see this as small. But you're right, like maybe calling it a pilot is that a way to be very clear about that.
Thank you. Director Becca?
Thank you. Well, I don't think I could articulate it any better than Mayor Millions did. And thank you, Chair, for also suggesting that the memorandum also identifies that the intent is to broaden this out. I am in support of it. I agree with everything that other directors have said with respect to that broader inclusiveness aspect of it. But I think this is a great opportunity to use this as a template to allow us to, working with the shot, come up with something that will be viable, concrete, that we can expand as per our intended policy with the other nations. So thank you for great input from everyone this morning on this. I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Minutes, you still have your hand up. Did you have another comment or question?
No, sorry, I just forgot that I have to take it down. Thanks.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say that I think it's great that you're thinking of being more proactive, such as going to job fairs and going to the schools and trying to do recruitment and talk about local government, because as our labor market gets tighter and tighter, you're getting less and less applications for jobs. So being more proactive is going to be part of our future. So I think that's a great strategy. And I think if they call this a pilot project, I will be in support of it. It's a good first step. And I also want to say that the city councils also have these very same conversations. How can we get more First Nations involved in our governments and employed in our government? So maybe there's some kind of potential partnership there as well. So maybe we could look into that. So I think I would like to make this motion unless somebody else wants to. I'd like to move that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors enter into a memorandum of understanding between the Shuswap First Nation and the Alberni Quayquat Regional District regarding the development of equitable employment initiatives. Would anybody like to second by Director Beckett? Any final questions or comments? Dr. Cote?
Thank you. There needs to be the words pilot project in that, or I'm not supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, can we add the term pilot project in that motion?
Yep, we can just add it right on the end.
Thank you, Heather. Any other final questions or comments? Dr. Cote?
Thank you. I'm not opposed to doing a pilot project, but I think that it needs to be, there needs to be a broader vision on this so that everyone is aware that we want to be inclusive to all, rather than this connection with Tishat alone. And I realize that that's our intent, but I want to make sure that the public is aware of that as well. So can staff suggest something that we could do, whether it be a new policy that we also present, or some other way to be able to make that aware? Thank you.
Jenny, can you respond to that? Or
Well, I'm just thinking, like, even right now, could you pass a resolution that just states that intention? Because then it goes side in line that we're doing this pilot, and then we have a resolution that the committee recommends that the board, kind of what you just said, Penny, supports broader inclusive employment throughout the region initiatives, or recommends the board prioritizes this in work planning. Regional equitable employment right now on the spot. Love that. We're good at that. But would that work? Like if we put a resolution, the other idea actually, because this will be going to so we've got initial support from the committee. The idea is that then Shuswap First Nation Chief and Council also have to support, commit the resources, and then we'll bring it back to the board. We could take some time and think about that resolution and then add that to the board resolution at that time when it goes back. We could work on it for the board meeting if it's included that at that point. Thank you.
I think that's a good idea, is bring it to the board. So we have a motion on the floor. Any other final questions or comments? Dr. McClellan?
Yeah, just thinking about all these conversations, and if we're having a memorandum of understanding, you don't have very many parties on those as a rule. And so you're going to have a whole bunch of them with any other group that you want to do. In my opinion, I could be wrong, but it just seems like it could become a thing that doesn't happen because there's just too much participation.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll call for the motion. All in favor?
Start a pilot project or look at it?
Yeah. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you so much. Great discussion, everyone, for a very important initiative. The next item on the agenda is establishment of a Bamfield Area Committee, and General Manager of Community Service, Jenny, can you speak to this, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so what we're looking at is, right now we have this committee, which is the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee. We take a lot of issues that are specific to Bamfield to this committee. We also have a specific water advisory committee in Bamfield, and that has representatives from the electoral area director as well as community representatives. I sit on both of those committees, and I find that the water committee has quite an advantage because it has community representation. So when we're doing staff reports about an issue, we're able to take it there. The community members that represent many opinions. It really does help, I think, to provide quality direction to the board. And I think as Bamfield is growing and developing, and it would be worth looking at a committee for Bamfield that includes not just the water system. There is waste, we have parks, we have proposed services like sewer system. We have a lot of things going on in the community. We also have the Hawaiian First Nation with the NACLA out there, and we also have the Chuckleset. So as we were talking about what could be a better governance model for Bamfield to help get good feedback to the board, we've sort of developed this Bamfield Area Services, or I think it's Bamfield Area Committee. So it would parallel what we see at the West Coast Committee as well, where you've got representatives, and it would just remove some of the issues that come to this table. We'll then go to that table. The Water Committee would be dissolved and replaced by this committee. We expect many of the members on that committee would also be interested in, having input on all of the larger issues. So yeah, we've got this in front of the AVB committee to consider, and we have a water committee on Tuesday evening. So we'll talk to that group as well and see if there is support for moving forward with this idea.
Thank you. Director Beckett, I'd like to hear your ideas on or comments on this motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jenny, for your work on this. I am in support of this initiative. I would like to acknowledge that I believe that community autonomy is important. Having said that, I also am very pleased to see in the report that there is consultation with the Water Commission, so that there is that type of engagement with the community that I think is important. But again, I'll be brief. I'm in support of moving this forward. Thank you.
Would you like to make the motion, Director Becker?
I would. Thank you very much. I would make the motion that the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors approve the creation of a Bamfield Area Committee and direct staff to bring forward a terms of reference to the ACRD Board for consideration and approval.
Could I get a seconder? Second by Director Sparrow. Director Cote? Then Director McCall.
Thank you. So to staff would, through the chair, would the other committees be dissolved then? Because I think that there's a lot of specific work that's being done through the committee for water. And I'm just thinking that that might create a lot of different meetings, extra meetings for people. So I'd like to know if the other committee are going to be dissolved. Thank you.
Danny, can you respond, please?
Yeah, the intent will be to replace. Basically, the Bamfield Water Committee meets quarterly. We will replace that committee with this committee. So essentially, in practice, it will almost feel like that committee just now has a broader scope. There might be different people sitting on that committee, but essentially it will replace that committee. So we don't see a significant change in staff hours since we're already meeting quarterly for that committee. This one will be a different committee now.
Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. So I understand Bamfield is different. It's remote. It's sort of should be incorporated at some point, probably. But I'm just thinking that what's to stop, say, Beaver Creek from wanting to have their own area committee going forward? Thanks.
Go ahead, please.
Well, we do have a water committee for Beaver Creek. So we already have a quarterly meeting that Beaver Creek Water Committee meets to talk about water issues.
Yes,
well, we have a committee for Salmon Beach that discusses all of the Salmon Beach issues as well. That committee already exists. I think that there's limited specific services. So we have a community like Bamfield that has a lot of services. The electoral areas have not as many services, right? Again, you mentioned that we've got waste, we have parks, we have a lot of things going on in Bamfield, which makes it appropriate for a committee. Of course, if an electoral area started having numerous services that were ACRD run, we might consider that as a function, but right now I'm scanning all of the services we have in all the electoral areas. And I think that the current AVB committee, the EA committee, and the West Coast committee typically is appropriate at every other level. I can't imagine more changes.
Did you have a follow-up, Dr.
I
Cote?
did. I just I can see why, but I'm still thinking that there could be subcommittees like the water committee or waste or something that might come out of this. It just, I don't know. I believe they should have one, but I think there still should be like a water committee and more specific, but that's up to Bamfield. Thanks.
Thank you, Director McClellan.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. Does this mean that Bamfield will no longer be on the Alberni Valley Committee? They were invited to the Alberni Valley Committee originally because they didn't fit well with the West Coast Committee. So quite a few years ago, we brought them on to here. And and if they did get a so-called Bamfield committee with just one director there, I think it's a good idea. The director, I guess his regular hometown is elsewhere, but he's there quite a bit. But so that'd be helpful. But are they going to be elected? Are they going to be appointed by the regional district board? Are they going to be appointed by the director? How are they going to be formed, and what's their thing to do? I think it's a good idea to have the local people do it, but how's it going to be formed? I think the director has to have a lot of say in that.
In response?
Excellent questions. Yes, we talked about that. I think at this point, and there are still some issues that are Alberni Valley and Bamfield crossing. So I think what we're proposing when we update the terms of reference is that we will update the scope of the Alberni Valley and Bamfield committee to remove, say, like specific services for Bamfield that will be addressed at the Bamfield committee. But for the interim, we probably won't change the membership. And then if in a year the director for Bamfield is finding that it's not of value and there's things that aren't there, then we can always update those terms of reference. But I do know that there still is connection between Bamfield and the Alberni Valley, more than say there would be with the West Coast. So we think that we would keep the Bamfield director on the Alberni Valley and Bamfield committee. Then the directors who would sit on the terms of reference for this new committee would include the Bamfield director, Hawaiian First Nation, as well as Uchucklaset. They would all sit on there. And then we would go through the process when we establish a new standing committee, is that we would advertise and solicit members from the community. And then those members, they make application, and then those applications are reviewed by staff. And yeah, so that's the proposed format.
I think with the projected growth for Bamfield, I think this is a good step forward if we're looking into the future. Any final questions or comments before we call the question? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next on the agenda is results of the 2023 tipping fee review for the Alberni Valley Sort and Go Center. Jenny, you're up again.
My apologies if you are sick of listening to me, because this is the big report. So we did a tipping fee review, and we were very comprehensive. We looked at all of the rates. The intention is to update. One of the biggest ones, the burning ones, was the bag rate and the municipal solid waste rate, but we also looked at all of the rates to see if they are appropriate. Our goals when we're setting tipping fee rates is we want to align with our solid waste management plan, our diversion targets. We also want to make sure that different streams are cost recovery and that we're able to support our education and recycling. So I will be happy to answer many questions. I'll do a quick overview. I suspect we will have questions. The first one is the municipal solid waste rate, which is just regular garbage, we'll call it. So our current rates are $3 per bag. We have a $6 minimum. And unless you're doing weighed garbage, so if you're coming in with, say, a truckload, you would then just pay by the ton. And that's $140 a ton with a $15 minimum. So we did a shift back in 2019. Our rates at that time were $2 a bag, and we increased that to $3 a bag. And we looked at what all the other regional districts were doing. They all had a minimum between, I think it was $6 and $10. And so we set a minimum rate of $6. Some of the feedback that we've had to date and frustration, especially when we initially put it in place, was that it was perceived as a 2-bag minimum, which makes sense. So then, and if you're doing a minimum amount of garbage, well, that goes against diversion efforts, doesn't it? Because then people are going to create more garbage. So very valid feedback. So with the recommendation that we are putting forward now is that we are saying that the rate is for 1 bag, and so there's no perceived minimum. We don't want you producing 2 bags just to fill your truck and get your money's worth. So we're saying staff are proposing a $5 minimum for a bag, and we're just going to reduce the minimum rate to $5 for anyone who is going by bag. Otherwise, rates will be charged at the regular rate. We are not recommending an increase for the tipping fee. So weighed rates will still be $140 per ton with a $15 minimum. And the reason is that we've continued to look, we've done a scan of all of our other regional districts. We've looked at what our costing is, and we feel that these are appropriate rates. We've got a spreadsheet in there that sort of shows what the different rates are. We are unique that we do charge by the bag, but we would like to continue to move forward with this. We are also unique that we have 1 scale. We are a relatively small landfill at the Alberni Valley. So we have 1 scale. And so when you charge by the bag, you can have people come in and I've got 2 bags, I've got recycling, I've got some metal. And so then you can charge them, receive their funds. They can go to all the different stations in the tipping area and then leave. If we were always charging by weight, they would have to come in, they weigh in, they go do their thing, they weigh out. And sometimes multiple times circling through the scale because we have 1 scale. This can cause a lot of traffic lineup and frustration from people. And so we do find that there is value to have a per bag rate. So we're going to recommend that we keep with that. That's where we're going to be differing from other regional districts, but our minimum rate of $5, slightly lower than other areas of 7, 10, and 8, but still reasonable. Traffic management is a big one for us. So we are considering that as we go through, because we are getting feedback with our working group on the landfill about how much traffic is going to the landfill. So again, we're trying to encourage people to divert and do everything at once, but also minimize their time that they come to the landfill and try and get everything together and do it at once. The recreational vehicle. So we're also looking to change these rates. We haven't updated these in a long time, and there is initiatives to start doing recycling of recreational vehicles because they're a mixed bag, right? They're containing all sorts of materials, and if we can encourage different people by themselves or companies to recycle these materials, then that'll help us out because we're getting a lot of material out of the landfill that normally would be. So we're recommending that that is increased to $280 per ton, and really the minimum rate is going up a lot from $300 to $500. So we're hoping that that will significantly increase recycling efforts on recreational vehicles. Commercial cardboard and mixed recycling. So we aren't looking to change that. We've done a review of that. We recently did update it and we think that is fine. Gypsum. So we collect all of our drywall materials and it gets transported and recycled in New Westminster. Costs for both the processing as well as transport are going up. And so we've recommended an increase from $250 to $260 per ton. Clean wood waste. Clean wood waste, we're looking to do a minor increase in rate for that. And a lot of it comes down to the cost. Wood is actually quite expensive to process, whether that is clean construction materials or branches because of the chipping cost and then the transport costs. And so when we did an assessment on what our costs are, we're looking at them being quite a bit higher. This is still lower than our garbage rate, so it should be still encouraging that diversion of material. So we feel that that shouldn't have a negative impact on diversion. Construction waste. We are not looking to recommend any change for construction waste. Again, we looked at that and we feel that it's still an appropriate rate. Medical facility waste, we do receive this from hospitals and care facilities. This is a controlled waste material. Again, it's one that we probably haven't looked at very closely in the last little while. And so we've done an assessment and we feel that this does need to be adjusted upwards to be appropriate for the extra handling. So we're recommending $150 a ton. The coastal cleanup material, which is basically, we have one company, we started a pilot project with coastal restoration, and they were looking at cleaning up derelict vessels and ghost gear, and they were very successful. We established a special rate for them for this material because otherwise the rate that we have to be charged at is quite high. It's very hard when you're pulling materials from the ocean to divert some recyclable material. So we've sort of set a rate that still is high because it is a matter of like some recyclable material, right? These are net pens, things that in theory can be recycled, but they're in such bad shape that the practicality is limited. And so we've set a special pilot rate that we were using for them. We feel like that's been successful in really encouraging them where they can to pull out all metal, all plastics, diverting that, recycling it, and continuing to find ways to do that. But we feel like we might as well set that as a rate in the bylaw, and then it would be accessible for anyone who's doing that work, not just in this one agreement. We also want to just update the definition for solid waste within our schedule for fees. And it's really just about our surcharge. So we have a surcharge for loads that contain a lot of recyclables. So if you're not diverting your cardboard and you're dumping a load that is, 25% cardboard, we will charge double for that because you can just recycle that. You don't need to put it in there. And so that has been very effective at encouraging people to do that. Now that we have an effective organic stream, you can either go directly to the organics processing facility locally, or you can drop it off at our landfill in that stream. We just wanted to update the bylaw for clarity to say that organics is one of those materials that you need to be diverting. So it'll be included in when we apply a double rate for loads that contain recyclable materials. Leaves and grass. So organics, we are looking at organics. This one is a bit of a challenging one because we have been charging, Yes, so we've been charging for branches. Sorry, I'll speak to the branches first. We set a rate of $5 a load for dropping off branches at the landfill. And again, as I was mentioning about the clean material, this is actually a very costly material for us to manage because of the chipping and the transport in order to recycle it. So when we did an assessment, we feel that this is significantly under. We're losing quite a bit of money managing this material. Again, we still think there's value in having a per load rate for this material for a number of reasons, but we would recommend that this goes up to $10 a load. As well, we are looking to incorporate the grass and leaves material into the organics rate. And so we were taking this material free of charge, but we are recommending that this gets included in the organics rate because there is quite a bit of cost to managing this material. All right, so if the committee supports this, we will look to amend a bylaw and take this to the board for recommended update. We're not looking to have these fees in place until the beginning of January. We want to communicate any of these changes, typically, especially when we're doing an update, a significant update. We will put out flyers in our newsletters to any of the haulers and then also put up notices as people are coming in. So they'll have many months notification before the change comes into effect. I think that's everything. And I'm sure there's lots of questions, so I will leave it at that.
Actually, I do have a question to start. In the spring, INEO held an open house at the recycling depot, and she was talking about possibly starting a recreational vehicle recycling initiative. Do you have any kind of update on where they're at on that?
Yes, I actually have received a letter and we will be bringing it to the board. And that's part of us updating this sort of as we're doing the review, we're updating the RV and we're hoping that that will support their initiative because I think they are planning, they're just starting right now to figure it out, right? It's a lot of work to start up recycling programs, especially for RVs. But I think they have some updates and information that they do want to share with the board. So hopefully at the next meeting, that'll be on the agenda.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions, Dr. Sparrow?
Oh, thank you. I have a few questions. We have here commercial branches are going to be deleted and residential branches at $10 a load. Is one of my questions. Why is residential branches getting charged and not commercial? And secondly, are we partnering with any other organizations in town that do take things for free or a reduced rate or ACRD so we can actually reduce the amount going into our landfill and also reduce the costs?
Okay, well, let's start with the partnering question. We support all of the local businesses and we have a bit of a directory, you know, like I want to divert or recycle this. And so we have a directory that people can find on the website. You can also use the waste wizard if you've got something like, where do I take this random thing? Christmas light string. So all of those things. Besides our recycling streams, there's of course thrift stores in town and other recycling initiatives, and we try to support those as much as we can. And usually businesses or people will reach out to us to let us know and we can add them to the information. Okay, with the commercial branches and the residential branches. So commercial branches, we are looking to put that together with the land clearing debris. And that is because the volume is so much that we want to weigh it. So we do want a per ton rate for the commercial branches. We always have had a per ton rate, but we'd like to combine that with the land clearing debris. And often that's because typically that's how it's coming in. A company is hired, they're doing work, and they have branches and some land clearing debris. So we figured that it was more efficient to put that all together in that.
Did you have a follow-up question, Director Sparrow?
I did, because it says commercial branches delete, which means there'll be no charge, and the residential branches are a charge. So you're going to penalize people that are cleaning up their hedges and their small trees, and the commercial guys are going to go away for free. So why doesn't the residential branches free as well? It's a smaller amount.
Thank you for asking for that point of clarity. Commercial branches will be charged at $110 per ton, which is the current land clearing rate. That is the intent of this.
That's not what it says. It says delete.
Yeah, I see exactly what you're seeing here. So that's probably not very clear in the report, but for the bylaw, when we do the bylaw update, the definition for land clearing debris will include commercial branches. And I appreciate you pointing that out.
Director Cote?
Thank you. Sorry about that. So I'm really happy to see that you've heard that the 1 bag minimum or 2 bag minimum was not accepted well by the community. I appreciate that you've gone to 1 bag at $5. I think that that's fair. It's actually a reduction for those people who only want to bring 1 bag. I think that that'll help out. As far as the residential branches going up, I know that I'm assuming that we use that material as cover for, we don't? Okay. I was assuming that. So I know that you can take the residential branches into town for free and drop them off. So like people to be aware of that, that option. I know that we take our branches into town and it's free. So as far as diversion from waste in the back roads and country, I haven't heard a lot of complaints lately from Mosaic or from the community forest, but I do know that this is always an issue going forward. Otherwise, I think that we have to cover our costs. I do have a question though. Other communities, so they don't do by bag, so they do by weight. Is there a minimum weight? And what is that? And so the garbage haulers, including the city, they all pay the $140 per ton going forward. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jenny. Okay, excellent. I'll start at the back, and I did check my waste wizard on the branches, and you are correct. You can still go to the Earthland and Sea, I believe it is, drop-off site in town. That's where you drop off your branches for free. Or is it JW Berry? Okay, so they've recently shut down. So just a heads up to you. Yeah, anyhow. But I believe you still can go to the site on Tebow Avenue. And I did just use the waste wizard, little plug here, to find where I can drop off my branches. So I think that answers that one. And then the other one was the other regional districts with the, so they do have minimum charges. And basically it's a minimum, everybody gets weighed. And so it's Nanaimo is 50 kilograms or less, it's $8. Otherwise you pay your tonnage rate. Comox Valley, it's under 100 kilograms, it's $10. Cowichan Valley, it is under 50 kilograms, it's $7, so on and so forth. So yeah, all of those minimums are a little higher than others. And the city does pay the per ton rate, as well as any commercial hauler or more than basically 3 bags of garbage would have to pay the per ton rate.
Great. It would be really great putting this out that we actually have that information to provide to the community, because I know I'll be asked. Thank you.
Any other questions? Dr. McClement?
Yeah, I've been trying to follow this. It's not too easy. So this is only charges at the landfill or whatever you call it now. Okay, so this is not what you're charging residents, say in this, they get picked up in the city or Beaver Creek, Cherokee, wherever it happens.
That is correct. This is all just the tipping rates that are seen at the landfill.
Okay, it's interesting.
Any other questions? Would someone like to make the motion? Director Cote?
Make the motion.
Can I get you to read it out, please?
I'm just looking for it.
Okay.
That the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Service Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors support the adoption of the amendment of bylaw R1029, Alberni tipping fee and regulation to reflect the results and recommendations of the 2023 tipping fee review for the Alberni Valley Sort and Go Center.
I'll second that motion. Any other final questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is question period. Is there any questions from the public? Alex, did you have any final questions? Do you want?
Oh, okay. Well, all right. I wanted to ask if the board wanted to hear some of the comments I got from Port Alberni residents online regarding the possible connection to Nanaimo. So I collected them here in my presentation. Jan Morrison said, responding to the question of if this would be useful to you, that's kind of how I posed it. Jan Morrison says, absolutely yes, especially if the schedule allowed us to go down in the morning and return in the evening. And please include Cassidy Airport. And here's the more scathing part of their comment. The current bus schedule is useless for same-day trips to Nanaimo and equally useless for trying to get a flight out in the early part of the day. Another resident, Susan Barnett, said, yes, as the older I get, the less I want to drive, but I still want to get around. Another person, Ann Broiker, says, I would like this for ferry travel as well and may need to use this for trips to Nanaimo when I can no longer drive there. And that's all I have so far, but I hope to contact some of those people and get some more engagement from them, but also talk to a bunch of new people. And I thank you for your time.
I just want to thank you so much for coming here today and being so engaged. And please stay in the loop of progress that we'll be making on this and the public engagement, and maybe you can pass that on to those people as well. Thank you. Any questions on Zoom, Heather?
So there are no attendees, so there's no questions, and there's no questions received by email. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn? Moved by Director McClellan, second by Director Cote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We'll see everybody back here at 1:30. Thank you.